In the beginning of the 2010s, in connection with the Industry 4.0 rollout, many industries were buzzing with talk about how simulation would revolutionize product development. However, to my surprise, what was often overlooked in these discussions was the crucial aspect of change management needed to make this vision a reality. Driven by curiosity, I decided to explore this gap and embarked on a journey into simulation leadership. More than 10 years later, I'm still searching for understanding. In this series, I'll be interviewing some of the most forward-looking leaders I've encountered during these years, aiming to grasp how they've successfully made change happen. This is the Simulation Leadership Podcast with me, Mark Soledal from EDRMedeso. I'm still in the northern part of Denmark, in Jutland, and at the epicenter of simulation leadership, as I talked about in the previous episode. Today I'm at Velux with Katrine Weick, Bundgaard. Welcome, Katrine.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Can you tell me a little bit more about Velux? What are you doing?
Sure. So, when you see a roof window, normally people actually call it a Velux window, and I think that's very good description of what we do. It's roof solutions, windows for slope roof, flat roof, and really selling this like daylight and fresh air to all buildings.
So it's like the thermos.
Exactly.
The brand is the product.
Exactly, yeah.
That's well done, I must say.
I agree.
Cool. So what about, we're here to talk about simulation leadership.
Yes.
What is your role in Velux?
So I'm the senior manager of the Sustainable Design and Simulation team in Velux. It's a part of product development, so we want to integrate it to all of our product development and way of working really with the development process in Velux.
So how was it when you joined Velux? What was the role of simulations back then? It's not too far away, but how was it back then?
Well, back then when I joined Velux, there were of course simulations, but simulations were more driven by individual people. Like, these people, they do it no matter if they're told to or not, because they have this fire inside of them. And so it was more like individual simulations. Some talked about it and some didn't, but it didn't have a strategic role, and it was more individual driven.
And how has that changed then in a few years' time?
Very, very much, yeah. So with inspiration from Simulation Leadership Forum back in 2019, and of course like individuals talking about it before, we decided to actually make a simulation strategy. So a strategy on how to implement simulation-driven development into product development, to make sure that we get the most out of these individual people and all the benefits that comes with simulations. But I think it wasn't until we actually decided to have a strategy and invest the time and money in it that we kind of reached this tipping point where we could take it further than, let's say, these individual initiatives.
So you got things together, and your presentation at Simulation Leadership Forum in Stockholm was maybe one of the most celebrated we've ever had.
Thank you.
Because of enthusiasm. Why are you so enthusiastic about simulations then?
It's a very good word, and if you could see me, you can see me now, I'm really smiling talking about this topic. I think simulations and the use of simulation in product development, that's an obvious thing. I think everyone understands the benefit of it, even people not in product development. But this, taking it to the next level and working with it in a strategic way, where you set up the initiatives and you actually see it come to life and see the also the additional benefits from it. That's really something that motivates me, and something that makes me smile when I go into work. That it gives me and my work the bigger purpose. And I really think this is an area that can change how companies do product development, big and small companies.
So it's a quite rewarding job you have with a lot of
I think so.
Change, and you get something back all the time. So yes. If you can look back on the main learnings or lessons learned in the last couple of years, then what do you bring with it? What works and what doesn't work when you start to talk about strategic simulations?
Well, I think one of the most important thing when talking about strategy in general, of course, is to get the right people on board. Not only the people with decision mandate, but also the developers, the people where you want to implement this. But getting a strategy accepted at a high enough level, of course, that's very, very important. Then it's also about this communication at all levels, like what is in this for you?
Right.
How can you benefit from this? Because when you want to work with simulations, you need to work in a different way earlier in the development stages. And if you don't understand the benefit of that, you just see a lot of additional work in a period where you normally didn't spend that time. So you need to understand the investment you need to do individual level, but also like bigger.
This leads to, I had a presentation at the seminar, was it 2 weeks back? And one of the participants asked about, okay, cost is fine, it's easy to define. But what about other benefits? How do you communicate that internally? Are we there yet?
This is a very good question. And actually a journey we have been on as well. In the beginning, when we wanted to communicate this simulation strategy, I was very focused on like the cost benefit. So we did a simulation, now we saved so much money. Okay, there was one-to-one, a small business case with, of course, like you could add on all the time. But as part of the journey we were on, we realized that this part maybe was easy to communicate, but also didn't have that much of an impact. So we had to look at these additional benefits, as you said. And that's harder to put money on, but I think you can do that. And so, for example, if you have a risk in a project, a red flag, that's very, very expensive, not just money-wise, but time-wise, focus, it's a distraction, and you have to involve people from many different levels in a company. So if you can like remove that or mitigate or just spread a light on the impact or expand of that, I think that's where you can really see the benefits. And of course, then comes the hard work, like how much is that worth? But I remember years ago, I talked to a project manager at Velux and asked him, so if we weren't able to do these simulations, what would that mean for your project? And he was like, well, maybe we would add an additional 6 months to development time. And that's something that everyone understands, like the impact of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's really a cost saved. But also, how do you get go to market earlier with a new product? Of course, 6 months is a lot of time.
That's
when
a lot
it comes
of time.
to sales. So that's interesting. So, this leads us from the strategic part needs to be aligned with the business impact you can get from this. So how do you see that? They are really closely related to the discussion we just had. But where do you think today it makes the most business impact from your perspective? Is it cost saving still? Is that the low-hanging fruit, so to say?
Well, there's always cost saving, of course, but I think there's so much more and so many new places where you can link simulation, like with higher focus on sustainability, for example, like optimizing for carbon footprint impact with simulations. That's a really good mix. So it's and also with new climate changes and temperatures and everything. So the risk mitigation early on, I think that's one of the biggest areas where you can really have an impact. Another one being we get so many ideas, and I think technology helps us with that. Getting maybe more ideas than we would 10 or 20 years ago, but sorting and figuring out which way to go so you're not getting stuck in this, I have 100 different ideas, like where to go. That's where simulation can really help you on a very early stage where it would be just too expensive to make like 100 different prototypes and investigate them. So I think those two are where the real benefits are.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in many industries, one of the things that happens is that a competitor suddenly comes up with a new product. And if you're stuck in an old way of working, and it's very hard to catch up on that. What's your feeling about this? Is that something you think is really part of your strategic journey to be agile, so to say, and respond to market changes fast?
Yes, it is very, very important. And a big value in Velux as well. This about being agile, not just in the way of working, but also in focus and way of thinking. And this is where simulation can help as well, because you can do these small, quick iterations, maybe do 100 or 1,000 different of them and help you be agile, but also give focus to the areas that's most important for you. But this about taking maybe 1,000 ideas, making a lot of iterations or quick investigations and then zooming in on what's important. I think that can benefit an entire company.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that aligns with what you mentioned earlier about convincing people in the organization. I mean, this agility part could maybe make a big difference when people around you could see that this actually helps. It actually matters when you do it really fast and you can come up with a design in a very short time instead of doing it the old way, because in the past you had a lot of time, but these days it's moving really fast. And you've experienced it as well.
Yes, I totally agree. And I see an increased awareness and also people asking for simulations. So in the beginning where we had to maybe sell the idea of simulations a little bit, now people are asking for it, or more developers are doing it themselves with the focus on democratizing simulation and simulation skills into product development. So now in Velux it's becoming more a way of working than it was before. And I think people start to rely on it as well and think it into projects.
I mean, I guess you're coming from a test culture that
yes.
for such a product could have been quite established, so
yes.
to say. So I guess you had a hard work in the beginning to really get everyone on board. And does this improve, collaboration between engineering and management, for example? Have you experienced changes in that area?
Yes, absolutely. I see more and more in management asking for this as well, because they understand the benefits of it. And engineering having it as an integrated part in their way of working. It's interesting that you mentioned this about a lot of testing, because that is really, I think, one of the things that has made Velux a big success. Our ability to test, and our test teams and prototyping teams are doing an amazing job. I am so impressed with all the details that they can put into the test and also get out of it. So in the beginning, a hard part of my selling strategy was to inform that we are not here to remove tests at all, because it could easily sound like that. Now the machines are coming, let's remove all the tests, and that's not at all what we wanted to communicate. So the focus on how can we actually help each other, make each other even greater. Maybe simulations can give input to have even more details or output from a test, and test output can give input to simulations. So I think they really have to go hand in hand. Also in prototyping, we see a lot of synergies and benefits in making quick simulations to make sure that the prototypes are made in the best possible way and with less reloops or waste. So this about communicating the collaboration and not wanting to remove everything else, that has been an important part of communication strategy and the strategy in general.
So you have come a long way.
Yes.
What challenges do you see in the near future then?
Time. You mentioned it before. This about everything has to go very fast, and in a year it will just have to go even faster. We can make a lot of simulations. There's still computing time. There's still setting up, validating, because one thing I really don't want is us to work too fast and delivering simulations with poor results, and then people will start doubting the credibility of simulations. That would be a very bad thing. So we still have to, be true to ourselves and how long it takes to deliver something, just like it takes time to make a good prototype or to perform great tests. If we rush this, then no one will benefit from that. But time is going faster. We need to move faster. So that's the big challenge, finding that balance.
So if you're looking forward, how would you envision the role of simulation evolving in Velux?
Well,
like a longer perspective.
So that's really the vision of simulation-driven development in Velux. So my big dream and goal is that simulation and simulation-driven development isn't just another tool, but really a way of thinking. Thinking it into the design processes, and I see more and more product developers adapting this mindset and way of working into their daily life. So in the beginning, where we tried to democratize simulation-driven development, and we had a few simulation engineers who would perform simulations in development teams. That was a big success. Now we have like even more, and I think it is becoming more and more integrated to the way of working, and I think that will just expand even more. I don't think we can talk about future without talking about AI, but I'm not sure exactly where we are on that and simulations right now, to be honest. But I am sure that it will have a big impact in all of simulation industry and the rest of the world, really. So that's something we are keeping track of, keeping up to date and ready to jump on that train when it's the right time, because we can benefit from that as well.
I guess it helps that I mentioned in the beginning, I talked about the simulation leadership's epicenter. I mean, in this area we have Velux, we have Grundfos, we have Vestas and others, and from what I understand, you're networking quite a lot within these.
Yes.
I mean, it's completely different industries, but from simulation leadership perspective, you face roughly the same challenges. How does it help you to be in this unique part of the world for this progress to happen?
That's a very good question and very important as well, because I don't see simulation leadership as competition. We can only benefit from sharing all of our knowledge and experiences and challenges, really. And I remember when we were in Helsinki at Simulation Leadership Forum earlier this year, we were a lot of people together, everyone talking about the same challenges and benefits and success stories, but also the challenges. And this about realizing that some parts of it is just a challenge. It is hard, but a lot of other people experience the same. Makes it easier to share, ways of doing it and what we could do. I think having a network within simulation leadership, and not just simulation like techniques, is unique. And that's where the Simulation Leadership Forum is really unique and one of the highlights of my year, to be honest, because everyone you talk to just face the same challenge, even like people in the beginning of their journey and people who have been there for many years, like Grundfos. Grundfos has been a big inspiration for me and a big impact on the simulation strategy we have in Velux, because we borrowed and found inspiration. And I think that was one of my recommendations when I presented in Stockholm last year, was to borrow and find inspiration everywhere you can, because there's really no reason to develop all of this yourself when other people have already been on this journey for a while. Because when we, in the industry, expand or build on our simulation strategies, I think we kind of push the industry as well. We push the expectations of new employees, the universities, what people really expect of a development department. So we can only benefit from this.
I think I remember everyone agreed that steal with pride was fine. To borrow ideas from others and reuse them and shape them to fit your organization.
Yeah, and reach out to other people to get sparring on this. I've done that with other companies after the Simulation Leadership Forums as well. Companies saying, hey, so we want to make a strategy, but where do we start? Yeah. Okay, well, come visit me and we can talk about that. And I did the same in the beginning, reaching out to Grundfos to get some inspiration and ask all of these, there are no stupid questions, but all of these, how did you do that questions.
Yeah. And you may know, if you have seen it, that we have already booked now Simulation Leadership Forum 2025.
I know, it's in my calendar.
Yes, and it's in Denmark.
Yes.
Of course, so we hope that we will exceed 100 participants this time. We have been steady at 80 for the last 2 years, but now I think the time is right to exceed the 100, which will be a good number. But you asked the question to me.
Yes, I did.
2 years ago, what's the vision for the Simulation Leadership Forum? When 500 people meet, will it be the same? What's your thought about this today then?
I still have the same concerns, because the best thing about Simulation Leadership Forum is kind of this, so when you enter, you get the feeling like we're all in this together, and you get to know the people. If you do the networking, you can really benefit from that. And if you expand Simulation Leadership Forum to go way beyond 100, I think it will kind of lose this special thing about everyone you talk to being in the same boat or having the same challenges, and you'll lose the like community feeling that I think you have. To be honest, I also don't think there would be 500 people in Scandinavia or the northern countries with this focus. And so if it was expanded, you would get too many people with other focuses as well, and that would maybe fit for another conference.
Yeah.
So I think maybe 100 would be max in my point of view. I would rather have it smaller and focused and to be able to have the good discussions. Yeah. Because if you recall in Stockholm as well and in Helsinki, there were so many great questions. So it wasn't only the presentation, it was really the questions, the talking. I remember we talked about it before this, like we need to put breaks so people can like network, but we also need to get people back, into and sometimes people don't want to go back because they're in such good discussions, and we need to keep that.
But I think that's every time that happens, I feel it's like mission completed.
Yes.
Because networking is the important thing here. I often get asked questions, how do you do this? And I say, how would I know? I've not been in the industry in that way. But that's why we invite for the Simulation Leadership Forum, because that is like you, people who are sitting there solving leadership problems to make the most use of simulations and not treating it just like a technology in the corner as it has been as it still is in many companies today, actually, but as it has been all over the place previously. But this podcast series is actually also here because we should keep the spirit up in between the let's call it the summits, the forums when we meet. And there will probably be small spin-offs from all the discussions we had last year as well, or this year. We had, for example, the simulation data management workshop that seems to be surviving. And we hopefully invite for something about that later this year. So I don't have any more questions to you, Katrine. I think it was a very good conversation. I'm super happy that you wanted to contribute to the podcast series.
Absolutely.
And I'm so happy to start in Jutland, as I said previously. Thank you, Katrine.
And thank you for inviting me. This is a really exciting topic. So I think like more focus on this in between the summit will be great. So I'll look forward to hearing the other podcasts as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.